So I'm just putting together this Blackberry Cobbler using a new recipe I found online. Pretty tempting for a cast iron cobbler, and I'm a big fan of cooking in cast iron, so I figured it's got to be better than just a plain old glass finished cobbler. Doing a little bit different than my blackberry pie. I mean, the recipe is generally the same: a bunch of sugar with a bunch of berries and some dough, and you got you a pie or a cobbler. But this one called for actually 2 pounds, which for me worked out to be about 2 quarts of blackberries frozen. Which it said thaw them out, I didn't. And then I think we put 1 1/3 cups of sugar, a half cup of flour, and a whole stick of melted butter in with the berries. And then put our dough on top, cut some more slices of butter, and it called for another 3/4 cups of sugar on top, and that just wasn't happening. I just couldn't fit it, because it's already kind of heaped up. So anyway, with that we're going to bake it for 45 minutes, and we'll see what it looks like when it comes out. And I hope it's delicious. Okay, so here's the finished product, and let me just tell you a couple things that I ran into. One was that it all melted down really nicely, like I had hoped. You can see it's not domed up now like it was when I first put it in. And the problem there was that I used the frozen berries instead of the thawed out berries, or as the recipe said, the unthawed berries, which is a huge pet peeve of mine. But anyway, I figured it meant they needed to be thawed out. But I was in a hurry and didn't really care. I'd choose the frozen berries. I think it's going to be just fine, but it did give me that issue with it being domed up, so I wasn't able to put on all the sugar like it said, because the sugar was just falling off the sides. But it's all melted down and soft down now. It's got a nice crisp to it. It was a little gooey when it was still hot, but now that it's cooled, it's got a good little crunch to it. And I had to cook it a lot longer. The recipe called for 45 minutes, but at 40 minutes, it still was real gooey on top, and it wasn't even boiling around the edges yet. And again, that's because of the frozen berries. You had a big cold mass here in the middle, so if you had the time to thaw the berries, it's probably the better way to go. But at 40 minutes, I pulled off the aluminum foil on the edge, and then I cooked it for probably close to another 30 minutes. I just kept checking every 5 minutes or so to see how it was looking, and finally saw that it was boiling around the edge, so I pulled it out. But anyway, we're going to dip into it here and see how it tastes. Alright, so I had to take a little sample before I started the video because it was so tempting. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. It pretty much tastes just like any other blackberry cobbler, like I expected. But the fact that it's made in cast iron makes it that much better. So, give it a shot. Like I said, the recipe was real simple. It was 2 pounds of blackberries, or 2 quarts. Works out pretty much exactly the same. I actually weighed just to see. Frozen blackberries, thaw them out, and then it was half cup of flour, which I would recommend a little bit more because blackberry always bothers me that it's so runny. This recipe actually called for half a cup of water as well. I didn't even use it. I'm glad I didn't. But half a cup of flour, 1 1/3 cups of sugar to mix up with the blackberries, and a stick of butter. You mix all that together, put your first pie crust in your pan and spread it all out up to the edge. Throw your pan in the oven. The recipe had for 7 minutes to kind of get a little crisp started on that bottom crust, and then dump all your berries and everything in. Put your top crust on, poke it full of pinholes with a fork, and then slice up another half a stick of butter. Just little chunks of butter all over the top. You could probably do without that, but the butter of course tastes good. And then it said another 3/4 cup of sugar, which again I only did about a 1/4 cup because it was heaped up with mine being frozen. But it turned out just fine, so I could probably do without that extra half a cup of sugar. I'll be just fine, especially since I'm putting on vanilla ice cream. But anyway, turned out really great, and I'm happy with it, and y'all should give it a shot.